Redditors who proposed and were turned down. Why did your partner reject the proposal and why were you confident you'd get a yes? My dad proposed to my mum blind drunk at a party. He didn't have a ring so he used a plastic one that was being used as cocktail decoration. She laughed, helped him up and told him to ask again when he was sober. Only took him 4 years. Your dad sounds like a fun guy. My best friend at GF practically begged him to propose for 3 years after college. He kept telling her he wanted to wait until he was established at his job, had money for a ring, wedding, house, etc. He was in love with her, but he is the kind of guy that wants to do everything the correct way, or at least what he thinks is the correct way. She eventually stopped bothering him about it, which included leaving little hints around the apartment. She used to leave wedding magazines or ads for sales at a jewelry store on the coffee table. So he finally gets established at work, saves a ton of money for a ring and a decent wedding. He plans a really cool proposal, and she said no. She actually broke down in tears and admitted she was seeing someone else for about 6 months and was in love but didn't know how to let him down easy. She was married a year later. He recently got engaged after spending about 10 years dating many different women. I'm really happy for him now because for a while he was in a dark place. I started to propose this last Sunday, but she shut me down mid-proposal. We were on a weekend-long date that ended with us joining her family for family photos. Once the family was done and left, we stayed behind with the photographer for some pictures of just the two of us. We have talked about marriage for months and took some engagement photos with a white church in the background. She joked about not having a ring yet. Then we stood under an arch of vines and flowers and it was a nice romantic spot. The photographer was ready, and I saw my opportunity and I took it. I started to talk about how much she means to me. I reached into my pocket for the ring and she was caught off guard and freaked out and said no. Once we were driving home she was like, "You just tried to propose, didn't you?" Yep. She's pretty embarrassed about the whole thing and told me to power through if her brain shuts down next time I try to propose, because the answer is definitely yes. I'd stop this time because I assumed she just wanted to get proposed to somewhere else or something, but it was just excitement and nerves. Oh well, we've been laughing about it the past few days. My mom initially turned my dad down. He traveled for work for long periods and was given the option to regularly fly home or fly someone to him. It's all rather romantic, really. They spent a week traveling through the French countryside after only being together for 3 months. She went with him abroad a few times and many different places in the US for long weekends. Of course, he'd also be home for periods of time and they'd stay together at my mom's place. When he proposed after taking a job with much less travel, my mom was afraid that they'd settle down and live together full time and maybe find out it didn't work. She didn't think it was practical to get married without living normal life together first. My dad thought that was unnecessary but said fine. My mom is an excessive worrier, though I understand the logic. He asked 4 months later and she said yes. I said no to a guy because we barely knew each other and it was our first time meeting in person. It was a public proposal, so when I said no a group of strangers started yelling at me, calling me cold-hearted because I said no. We had played an MMO together for a few months and talked on the phone. He was a cool guy and I did like him. He had a lot going on in his life so he kept saying we should get married. I told him maybe further down the line we would. He had already been divorced twice and his ex-wife had her claws in him over their child. Long story. There was a lot of drama there. He told me that when we got married I'd be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen raising a gaggle of children. I didn't want kids, but was cool with his kid. All in all, it was just too much for being so quick. After he went home he started accusing me of all kinds of things because I didn't answer my phone right away or didn't respond to his texts instantly. I wish him the best, but it just wasn't going to work. He told me that when we got married I'd be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen raising a gaggle of children. I didn't want kids. 20 feet x 20 feet red flag on a 40 feet pole, waving fiercely in a strong wind. My friend proposed to his girlfriend at another one of our friends' weddings. They'd been dating for years and she knew he had a ring and that he was waiting for the right moment. Well, she thought it was totally rude to try to steal the spotlight and didn't necessarily say no, but she sure as heck didn't say yes either, just a bunch of cussing. The whole situation stole the spotlight anyway, and now they're married for almost 10 years and the couple's wedding it was at divorced 2 years later. I'm always amazed that people think that weddings are good times to propose. Only thing worse than a wedding would be a funeral. Apparently my grandpa also ran into that. They were with grandma's family on Christmas and her sisters were bugging her about getting married and she said no way, I don't want a proposal on Christmas Day. Turns out grandpa had the ring in his pocket at the time. He waited a couple of months before proposing and I guess told her that story much later. I rejected, didn't really answer, my boyfriend's proposal because he was drunk. It was midnight, we were in a fried chicken takeaway, and he proposed using a brass washer that he found on the floor. A year later he proposed on holiday in Venice with an actual ring and a poem that he'd written. I said yes and we got married last month, but I still carry the brass washer in my purse. That's so dang sweet that you still keep that washer. I was at a Red Sox's game 2 years ago. Me and 38,000 people witnessed a proposal rejection. The cost to get on the Jumbotron is a couple $100, so if this was a joke it would have been a real pretty joke. Since that day I have wondered what happened and would really like an answer. If you're in this thread, please let me know. There is a documentary called Unsung Hero about a guy who publicly proposed at a UCLA game and was turned down. It's not the same thing but might bring you some closure to watch. She said no because we were teenagers and I was moving across the country. I was confident I'd get a yes because we were teenagers and I was moving across the country. When you listen to Hey There Delilah one too many times. My dad proposed to my mom on Christmas Eve at church because my mom made an offhanded comment about how it would be pretty to get married there. Her response? Ask me when you're serious. What she didn't know was that the ring was under the Christmas tree back home. They celebrated their 30-ish year wedding anniversary in June. This is a wholesome story and I love it. I bet it blew her socks off when she opened it. Not a proposal, but when my mom and dad were dating, my dad told my mom he loved her. Her reply was, when I feel the same, I'll let you know. It became a running joke in their marriage. I've told this one before. We live in France, so husband decided he would propose in French, casually, without getting on one knee. He says, tu veux que me pause, marry me. I heard, me pause, do you want to push me? So I did. I pushed him, so goddamn hard, and ran away giggling. Not what he had expected. My partner ended up being a pedophile. He had a daughter. He could still see her legally. I guess not into incest. But I found out maybe 2 weeks after he proposed. Wild shock how people you trust can be completely different than you think. Not me, but my now wife, who doesn't Reddit. She dated a dude all through college. When both were in grad school, he asked her parents for permission to propose. He was enthusiastically given permission, and before he even asked her, her mom was going to bridal shows and starting planning. She even won a KitchenAid mixer at one that she gave to my now wife. When Debro actually proposed, which apparently was done by pulling a ring from his hoodie and saying so, do you wanna, or something equally romantic along those lines, she realized that not only did she not want to marry this dude, she didn't even want to date him. Whoops. Side note, we still use that mixer. Thanks Paul. I was the one who said no because he refused to wear shoes in public, shops, malls etc. Loved him like crazy, but for some reason I just couldn't accept the no shoes policy. I broke up with Jim because I felt that it was such a stupid thing to hold over him, considering the amazing things he has done for me and my child. I felt horrible. He texted me every day for months, asking to meet up for coffee, wanting to see my son. Not his bio kid, but they were crazy over each other. First day he had shoes on and made me drink too much wine. Took me home and asked me to try again. I was too drunk to say no. Been married 8 years. He wears shoes in public and I think he is just awesome. I was 19 and in love. My wife was in love, but if we were going to get married I needed to grow up. I made some changes and asked her again 6 months later. She said yes and we got married 3 months later. We celebrated our 20th anniversary in May. Congratulations. Nice to see a success story buried in these sad comments. I proposed to my boyfriend so he could get surgery after it came up that I might get a job with insurance. Love him and didn't want him to die etc. The job didn't pan out so it wasn't mentioned again. Several months later, he started a joke to where every time I left my ring that he gave me on a counter, he would propose. It happened about 5 times in the span of about 8 months. I usually just laughed and ran away every time it happened. It was cute and embarrassing and I thought he was teasing me for when I asked him. The other day a friend asked us when we were gonna get married and he said, well, she keeps turning me down. Oops. So I may have accidentally been rejecting him for several months cause I thought he was joking. He hasn't done it in a while, but I know I will tell him yes next time. But I will ask him for us to actually get married once he's healthy and started school. Leave your ring on the counter on purpose, LMAO. Got rejected because, and I quote, the man is supposed to propose, not the woman. I was confident because we talked about wedding stuff beforehand and I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. Plus, he never proposed after that, just left. I gave my then girlfriend a promise ring. We'd been dating for a year and I wanted to buy her something special to mark the occasion. I asked my mom for some advice on a gift. My folks had the happiest, healthiest relationship I've ever witnessed. So when my mom told me how elated she was when my dad gave her a promise ring, they were young and didn't have much money. So dad gave mom a promise ring while he saved for an engagement ring. I knew that I was going to do the same. I planned a nice evening, dinner at her favorite restaurant, flowers, a walk by the lake, her favorite dessert. While walking, I found a nice spot and pulled out the ring. I slid it onto her finger, explaining what it was and what it meant. My girlfriend looked as though I'd just crap on her hand. She pulled the ring off her finger, handed it back to me and said, in so many words, thanks, but no thanks. Come back when it's an engagement ring. My friend turned it down because he proposed when her nails weren't done and she couldn't have good pictures. I was 18 and had been dating this guy for 2 years. He enlisted and didn't think to mention it until he got his orders for basic training. I wasn't thrilled that he waited until after the fact to tell me, but I accepted it and was supportive before and during his training. 3 months go by and we're at graduation. Instantly I notice he's a different person. At 18 I already knew that life experience changes people. And over those few days I start getting scared that this military life isn't a good fit for me. I'm nothing like those people. I wouldn't fit in, and it's not the lifestyle I wanted for myself. I'm sort of marinating on these thoughts and figuring out where to go from here. Basically, how do I end this politely? I decide basic training graduation isn't the time. I would wait until he's settled at tech school. The time comes to leave the base and go home, and he gets down on one knee. I'm totally shocked. Somehow I didn't think this was a possibility. He wanted what all young military guys want, marriage and a family. I wanted those things too, but not with this shell of a person he'd become, and not living as a military wife. He's doing fine now. We both found partners and have families. We're still friends, and we both agree that it's a good thing I didn't accept his proposal. My grandpa wanted to get married right after his tour of duty in Korea, but grandma made them wait a year. Her reasoning was that they needed to make sure they were the same people who fell in love. Grandpa admitted years later that it was a great idea because he needed to learn how to be a civilian again. One of my previous church leaders had told me about how he proposed to his wife 3 times before she said yes. She said she didn't feel it was the right time those 2 times. My dad proposed to my mom and she said ask me again in 3 months. He wrote it on the calendar and everything. They just celebrated their 42nd anniversary. My boyfriend proposed to me while facing the microwave. I thought he was hungry and talking to his food. Then he proposed while we were in bed. His eyes were closed. I figured he was asleep, and it was cute. Then he legit proposes with a ring in an awesome place. I say yes, etc. Turns out he'd proposed multiple times over the last 2 years and thought I'd always brushed him off. Now happily married, and not to the microwave. Edit. Here's a story to add to the ambiguousness. About 2 years after we were dating, after we'd already talked about getting married, he gave me a small box for Christmas. He'd made breakfast and sat this white box with a ribbon tied around it on the table. Inside was his mother's beautiful emerald ring. My heart was pounding. All I could say was it's beautiful. He said good. I'm glad you like it. Put it on my left finger, gave me a kiss, and got up to grab something from the kitchen and resumed our previous conversation. After what seemed like an eternity wondering if that was his version of a proposal. Who knows with this guy. I finally work up the courage to ask, so what does this mean? He said it's your Christmas present. My mom thought you would like it. Then, a look of panic came over him, and eventually a grin. He laughed so hard he cried. I was furious. What a love story. Edit. I wanna hear the microwave side of the story. She turned me down because, in her words not mine, I can't because I'm freaking someone else, and the worst part about it, I didn't even get the dang deposit back on the ring. Whole experience was equivalent to a burnt piece of toast, and I was confident that I would get a yes as we shared a 1-year-old child. Talk about a walk of shame. Whoa, that's rough. I hope you've been able to move past it now. College girlfriend, near graduation. She moved in with me the night we met because we had such a strong bond and or because she had such a horrible roommate. We'd been living together a couple of years. She said that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with me. There was going to be some separation. I had a semester at sea left. I knew she was opposed to the idea of marriage, but I was terrified of losing her and wanted a commitment. She said no. I tried to change her mind on and off for about 6 months and finally gave up. 4 years later she said, you know that question you asked? You should ask again. You might get a different answer. I had no clue. We got engaged in 1990, married in 1991. 3 sons. Still going strong. She thought she had a tumor in her stomach which turned out to be scar tissue from a previous surgery that just grew. So when she learned it was not cancer she said yes. Now, that's wholesome. Does it count if I got the yes and 8 months later she called it off 1 month before the wedding? Her reason? She was a good Catholic girl and her mother's wishes was for her to go from her family's house to her husband's house. A month before the wedding she had this freak out about not really experiencing life on her own as an adult. That her own personal dream was to get an apartment with a couple other girls and experience life together. So we had to cancel the wedding. People cancelled their flights. I lost several deposits. But I did manage to get the big deposit from the banquet. I bought a shiny new ring from one of those chain engagement ring store and I was stuck with it because no one would buy it from me for the price I paid. Not even close. Big lesson. Frick the tradition on buying a big rock for an engagement ring for big $sign. My confidence? She was my college sweetheart for 2 years. Her family loved me. My family loved her. We hung out all the time. No major fights. My downfall. I was so caught up with adulting, graduate from school, get a job, marry your college sweetheart, buy a house, that I didn't see the signs. Now when I looked back, she wasn't ready to get married, and if I were to be honest, she loved the idea of me, college grad, stable job, but really didn't love me. She loved the idea of me, college grad, stable job, but really didn't love me. That describes all of my girlfriends from the time I graduated college until I met my now wife. I asked because we had been dating for 2 years and living together for a year. I paid the down payment on her house, which was to be my rent for a year. Everything was perfect, as far as I knew. She said no because she was in love with her co-worker, whom she'd been sleeping with since before we even moved in together. Y'all, I dodged a heck of a bullet. I've been married to the love of my life for 2.5 years now and have been with her for nearly 7 years. She's the most incredible and selfless person I've ever known. I know I should hate my ex. I should hold a huge grudge, even if it were just over the $6,000 I gave her for her down payment. But the way I see it, I paid $6 grand for a painful truth followed by the happiest of endings. Worth every penny. Asked my boyfriend of 7 years on New Year's Eve. He said, quote, I'm gonna say no, because I have a plan, and I wanna do it. Doesn't want me stealing his thunder. I've never understood why people propose without it being a confirmed topic of conversation prior to the proposal. When I proposed to my ex, I knew 100% that I was getting the yes, because we had discussed it. She even knew what kind of ring she was getting. It was just down to the planning of how and when for me. She did end up leaving me the week before the wedding. so I would have preferred a no much sooner, but that's life. I got kinda happy at the start of your comment. Now I have so many emotions. Didn't get immediately rejected. A week after proposing and getting a yes, I got the "we need to talk." She said she didn't want to hurt me and wished she could marry me, but didn't feel things were as happy as they'd once been. We were both veterinarians and working long hours and seeing each other less than we'd like. She was also undergoing some major depression as well. We separated shortly after, were common law married, but hadn't had a ceremony of any sort yet. Was confident I'd get a yes because we talked at length about getting married once we had some money and my visa had gotten renewed for another 2.5 years. Was American, living in UK with British partner. Sorry that happened. Sometimes it's just not meant to be. Sometimes relationships and feelings change and it's part of life. Nobody's fault, really. I've been with this girl 7 years. Upon reading this post I just asked her, "Hey, we ever getting married?" She said, "Baby, that's too expensive." This comment is about 5 minutes later and we are still together. Ma dude. So, I met this girl when I was 27 or 28. The year 2013. About 3 or 4 weeks from now. I'm 33 now. You math it, we haven't spent a single day without saying something to each other since. A few weeks later we were dating. We were semi-long distance. So after a month or two of trading off driving to each other's places on the weekend, I sat her down and I said, "Look, I think it wouldn't be fair to either of us if we weren't both on the same page with this. Is this serious?" She said yes. Then she asked the question, what I thought about marriage. We both agreed that that is what we wanted. We were both at an age where we knew what we wanted. So fast forward about 4 months. I have gotten a ring made that had diamonds from grandparents on both sides. A custom ring. I tell her I am working the weekend and I couldn't come down. Her sister, who was in cahoots with me, told her they wanted to take pictures at a nice location with her daughter. Of course it's really so I can propose. The whole time she is getting ready, I'm already there hiding. She is sending me pictures of different outfits asking me if they look nice for the picture. All of them do and I keep telling her she looks good. I'm dying inside. Finally she gets there. I pop out. Her eyes go wide and before I get through my first sentence, she yells no and pushes me. It took me a good 5 seconds to realize she was just shocked. It took her about the same amount of time to realize what she didn't, to profusely say sorry and to continue. She then said yes. We got married in November of 2015. I know. Not quite the type of story that was asked for, but I initially thought I was denied. That one fits and it's really cute. Refreshing from all the cheating ones. From the other side of the proposal, attended a summer workshop in college. Clicked with a guy right away. At the end of the week he asked me to marry him. I tell him WTF, that's insane. Year later he asked me on the anniversary of the first proposal. Got the yes. Just hit 15 years. I almost agreed the first time, but I was very concerned that we wouldn't be taken seriously. But we really were freaky compatible from the very beginning. After 4 years I bought a ring. Found an apartment near where she was going to college. Informed all my friends and family what I was planning. Then she ghosted me. I didn't know if she was alive or dead. I couldn't contact her. She blocked me on all social media. I could not for the life of me figure out what I did wrong. Turns out, she just found some side dong and was done with me. The ring is now in a river, probably never to be seen again. And that's the alternate way that the ring passed through time and knowledge to be found by Deagle and Smeagol. It was her birthday and she was at work. She had always hated the job and felt super bad about having to work on her birthday. She also had been begging me to propose. I decided to get off of work early and surprise her. I show up to her job and get down on one knee. She looks stunned and asks here. I didn't know what to do, so I said what, and she said no and stormed out to her car. I didn't know what to do, so I went to my parents' house to cool off since I was panicking and had just embarrassed both of us in front of her co-workers. When I went home to talk to her, we cried and apologized to each other after she told me that she didn't want the memory of the proposal to be at that job she hated. But of course she wanted to marry me. A week later I proposed again while we were on a walk, and as of now I'm engaged. But yeah, I honestly did it spontaneously, and if I had been paying attention, I wouldn't have known what a bad idea it was to propose at her job in the first place. I proposed as part of an elaborate ruse in which she thought she was being brought to the park to film our friend proposing to his significant other. I was hiding nearby, came up behind her, tapped her shoulder, got on my knee, presented the ring, and popped the question. She said no because she thought I was ruining the other, fake, proposal. She pretty quickly realized what was going on after an awkward pause and said yes, but I have her saying no, 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 what are you doing on tape? For the record, none of us have ever let her off the hook for thinking that I would actually hijack another proposal like that. So, I'm actually currently engaged to the person I proposed to, but at the time, we weren't ready to be married. We've been dating for about 18 months, and I thought it was the logical next step. I didn't have any money, so I didn't buy them a ring or anything, but I did make a nice dinner and ask. They said no, we're not ready. We had a deep conversation and moved on, lived our lives together, did couple Y things. It's been nice. A little less than 6 years later they took me out on an amazing day, ended it with a surprise party at a favorite restaurant with a homemade proposal cake. I said yes, and we're getting married in about a year. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.